The idea came up when we started thinking about waste collection, garbage collection policy in Let's Do It network. People have been cleaning illegally dumped garbage, and the question was, so how do we keep the countries clean? How do we make it so that it doesn't reappear? To do that, you need to change environmental policy. And we were asking ourselves, how can we change environmental policy by involving many people? So instead of doing lobbying targeted at a few officials or a few political parties, how can we involve a mass of people, and using their participation, how can we change environmental policy? So we started playing around with the idea, and then that's kind of how it got going. And it obviously then grew from there. I mean, Citizen OS today is not environmental policy or environmental decision making specific in any way. It just expanded from there, but that's how the idea kind of started. The first use cases where we can talk about creating an impact was through our first big partnership. It's called Citizen Initiatives, Rahvaalgatus in Estonian, and they were the first partner who took Citizen OS software and built a tool on top of our API and opened it up for all citizens of Estonia to make legislative proposals to the Parliament of Estonia. The first one was to protect the habitat of an animal, of an endangered species in Estonia, a flying squirrel. And that was the first partnership that we had that created a lot of actual real-world impact. The app is available in 10 different languages, and those languages have been selected to a large extent based on which countries have an interest or a need or a project going on. There was an interesting case a few months ago when we discovered that there's quite active users in Macedonia. They described what they've been using it for, like youth empowerment and civic education. In Indonesia, there's a project which is a pilot project right now. It's happening on 10 different Indonesian islands. It's a discussion about how to create better waste disposal and waste management practices on those islands. And there's been a lot of carry-on interest from that project. Many other organizations from Indonesia have expressed interest in using Citizen OS for collaborative decision making or for involving communities in decision making. Another thing that we constantly think about is identification of people, because in Estonia it's not a challenge at all. Like you have the electronic ID infrastructure. A few other countries have a similar thing, but in most countries, because Citizen OS is used for more formal decision making, it's important to identify who people are online, because you can't allow for bots or fake accounts to vote if this goes on to the parliaments or if this goes on to city councils. Even if you have technical mechanisms in place, the question then becomes, how do you get people to trust that mechanism enough to actually use it or give their identity online? But it needs to be solved, otherwise like democratic decision making for countries online isn't going to work, or it's not going to at least proceed to higher levels of impact. And this is again something that where we have to work through our partners who tell us what the identification methods or mechanisms are, but it's something that we think about constantly. Is like, how can we support a wider variety of identification options? It's also about talking to other organizations, other startups that are innovating around the identification issue or identification problem. It's about creating a system that is versatile enough that it supports various different identification methods. So if a partner comes to us in a country that has its own identification mechanism that they can use, then Citizen OS needs to support that. the world is moving into an age of technology. We're increasingly using technology for our transferring our money around, or making our purchases, or communicating with each other. Many things that it has been possible to take online have been taken online, have been made digital. However, if we think about the way we decide as communities, the way our countries are run, that is still very much 16th, 17th century models that we use. The general direction of the dream is that we find different models and different ways that people can be actively engaged in decision making.